She looked like just another tired waitress in cheap clothes. Nobody on Flight 447 knew that Sarah Martinez once flew fighter jets and saved hundreds of lives. But when both engines failed at 30,000 feet, the quiet woman in seat 17A would have to reveal her deadly secret. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Sarah Martinez sat quietly in seat 17A, looking out the small airplane window at the clouds below. She wore old blue jeans with holes in the knees and a faded t-shirt that said Joe's Diner on the front. Her hands were rough and had small cuts from washing dishes and handling hot plates all day long. She looked tired, like someone who worked double shifts to pay rent. The flight attendant walked down the aisle with a bright smile. Her name tag said Jenny, and she looked like she enjoyed her job. "Good morning. Can I get you anything before we take off?" Jenny asked sweetly. "Just water, please," Sarah said in a quiet voice. Jenny looked at Sarah's simple clothes and tired face. She felt sorry for her. "Are you taking a little vacation from work? You look like you really need it," Jenny said, thinking Sarah probably worked at some cheap restaurant. "Something like that," Sarah answered, not wanting to talk much. "I bet you deserve a break. Working with customers all day is really hard. I used to wait tables myself before I got this job. People can be so mean sometimes," Jenny said, trying to be friendly. Sarah just nodded and smiled a little. Jenny had no idea that the woman sitting in front of her once flew fighter jets that cost more money than most people make in their whole lives. Sarah had commanded missions that were top secret. She had saved hundreds of lives and was once famous among military pilots all over the world. But that was 5 years ago. Before everything went wrong. Before the mission in Afghanistan that destroyed her career and made her lose everything she cared about. Now she served coffee and burgers at Joe's Diner in a small town in Kansas. She worked from 6 in the morning until 10 at night, 6 days a week. Her boss, Joe, was a nice man who never asked questions about her past. He paid her cash and let her live in the small apartment above the diner. The businessman sitting next to Sarah opened his expensive laptop computer. He was wearing a nice suit and shiny shoes. His briefcase was full of important papers. "Sorry, I have to work even on the plane. Big meeting in Chicago about aviation contracts," he said, looking at Sarah's worn-out clothes. "What kind of work do you do?" he asked, making conversation. "I serve food to people," Sarah answered simply. "That's honest work. Hard work too, I bet. You probably see all kinds of interesting people at the restaurant, right?" the businessman said. "Yes, all kinds," Sarah replied. The businessman went back to his computer screen. It showed pictures of military airplanes and technical drawings. Sarah could see everything clearly, but she pretended not to look. She recognized every plane on his screen: F-16s, F-22s, Apache helicopters. She had flown some of them herself. But the businessman didn't know that. He saw a tired waitress in cheap clothes who probably never finished high school. He would never guess that Sarah had a college degree in aerospace engineering and had graduated at the top of her class from the Air Force Academy. A young mother sat across the aisle with her 7-year-old son. The boy was looking at a book about airplanes and asking lots of questions. "Mom, how do planes stay in the air? They're so heavy," the boy asked. "I don't really know, honey. Maybe you can ask someone who knows about that stuff," his mother said. Sarah wanted to explain it to him. She could have told him about lift and thrust and drag in simple words he would understand. But she stayed quiet. She had learned to keep her knowledge hidden. An elderly man sitting behind her was talking to his wife about their grandson who just joined the Air Force. "I'm worried about him flying those dangerous jets," the old woman said. "He'll be fine, dear. The military trains their pilots very well," her husband replied. Sarah closed her eyes. She remembered her own training. The long days learning how to fly faster than the speed of sound. The nights studying weather patterns and emergency procedures. The pride she felt when she got her wings and became a fighter pilot. She also remembered the friends she made. Good people who trusted her with their lives. Some of them were still flying missions around the world. Others had died in combat, far from home. The plane reached its flying height and everything seemed normal. Sarah tried to sleep, but her mind kept going back to the past. She thought about the call sign Falcon, that she had earned by being the best pilot in her squadron. Other pilots respected her. Generals asked for her opinion. She was somebody important. Now she was nobody. Just another working woman that people ignored. 2 hours into the flight, Sarah felt something wrong before anyone else noticed. The plane made a small shaking motion that passengers thought was normal turbulence. But Sarah's trained senses picked up something different. The vibration was coming from the left engine and it didn't sound right. She looked out her window and saw a small trail of black smoke coming from the engine. Her stomach dropped. She had seen this before in military aircraft. The engine was failing. Most passengers were reading books, watching movies on their phones, or taking naps. They had no idea they were in danger. Then the shaking got much worse. The plane lurched to the left suddenly, throwing people against their seats. Coffee spilled everywhere. A woman's purse fell into the aisle. The little boy with the airplane book started crying. The pilot's voice came over the speaker system and he sounded nervous. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some mechanical difficulties. Please return to your seats immediately and fasten your seatbelts. Flight attendants, please prepare for possible turbulence. But Sarah knew this wasn't turbulence. The pilot was trying not to panic the passengers, but they were in serious trouble. The businessman next to her looked scared. His face was white and his hands were shaking. Is this normal? He asked Sarah. Probably just engine trouble, Sarah said calmly, not wanting to frighten him more. But inside she was analyzing everything. The smell of burning oil. The way the plane was pulling to the left. The sound of the engines changing. She had experienced engine failures before in military jets, but this felt worse. The shaking became violent. Passengers started screaming. The young mother held her son tightly as he cried for his daddy. The elderly woman was praying out loud. Even the flight attendants looked terrified. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. People fumbled to put them on, some putting them on backwards in their panic. The businessman was hyperventilating. We're going to die, aren't we? He gasped. Sarah looked at him with steady eyes. Not if I can help it. In the cockpit, the two pilots were fighting to control the plane. Captain Williams had been flying for 20 years, but he had never faced anything like this. We've lost engine number 2 completely, his co-pilot shouted over the alarms. Engine 1 is failing too. We're losing altitude fast. Captain Williams grabbed his radio. Mayday, mayday, this is United Flight 447. We have total engine failure and are going down. We need immediate assistance. Air traffic control responded quickly. Flight 447, we copy your mayday. What is your current position and how many souls on board? 212 souls on board. We're about 50 miles west of Chicago. Both engines are dead. We're gliding but losing altitude fast. On the ground, emergency teams sprang into action. Within minutes, 2 F-22 Raptor fighter jets were racing through the sky toward the failing passenger plane. The lead pilot's call sign was Steel, and his wingman was Viper. They were both experienced combat pilots. Control, this is Steel. We're approaching the civilian aircraft now, Steel radioed as he spotted the smoking plane ahead. Roger, Steel. What's the situation? Steel flew closer to get a better look. What he saw made his heart sink. Black smoke was pouring from both engines. The plane was losing height quickly and wobbling dangerously. Control, it's bad. Heavy smoke from both engines. The aircraft appears to be in an uncontrolled glide. I don't think they're going to make it to an airport. Back on the passenger plane, people were crying and holding each other. Some were calling their families on their phones to say goodbye. The flight attendants were trying to keep everyone calm, but they were scared too. Jenny, the flight attendant who had served Sarah water, made an announcement over the intercom. Her voice was shaking. Ladies and gentlemen, we need your help. Is there anyone on board with pilot experience or aviation knowledge? Please identify yourself immediately. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had sworn she would never get involved with flying again. After what happened in Afghanistan, she had promised herself she was done with that life forever. But she looked around the cabin at all the innocent people who were about to die. The little boy who loved airplanes. The elderly couple thinking about their grandson. The businessman who had dreams and a family waiting for him. She couldn't let them die. Not when she had the skills to save them. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. Every passenger looked at her like she was crazy for moving around during the emergency. Ma'am, you need to sit down right now. Jenny shouted at her. I can help, Sarah said simply. Jenny looked at Sarah's diner uniform and messy hair. Are you a pilot? Instead of answering with words, Sarah walked to the front of the plane where the emergency radio was located. She picked up the handset and spoke in the clear, calm voice that military pilots use during life-or-death situations. Military escort aircraft, this is Falcon requesting immediate assistance. There was total silence on the radio for several long seconds. Even the background static seemed to stop. Then Steele's voice came back, full of complete shock and disbelief. Did you just say, Falcon, as in the Falcon? In his F-22 fighter jet, Steele looked at his partner Viper with wide eyes. Both pilots knew that call sign. Every military aviator in the world knew about Falcon. She was a legend. The best combat pilot of her generation. She had completed impossible missions and saved more lives than anyone could count. Falcon, this is Steele. We thought you were out of the service, Steele said carefully. He knew about the scandal that ended her career. The mission in Afghanistan that went wrong. How she had been forced to resign in disgrace and disappear from the military world. I am out of the service, Sarah replied calmly. But right now these people need help and I'm the only one who can give it to them. Ground control broke into the conversation. Falcon, this is Chicago Control. We're showing multiple system failures on the civilian aircraft. Can you assist with the situation? Every passenger in the cabin was staring at Sarah in amazement. The businessman who had been sitting next to her couldn't believe what he was hearing. Wait a minute, he said, standing up despite the turbulence. You're actually a fighter pilot? A real military pilot? I was, Sarah corrected him. Now I'm just someone who wants to get all of you home safely to your families. She keyed the radio again with the confidence and authority that had once made her famous throughout the Air Force. Chicago Control, this is Falcon. I need you to patch me through to the cockpit immediately. And Steele, I need you to be my eyes out there. Tell me exactly what you see. Roger, Falcon. It's an honor to work with you again, Steele replied. For the first time in 5 years, Sarah Martinez was not pretending to be someone else. She was not hiding behind her waitress uniform or keeping her knowledge secret. She was Falcon again, the pilot who never gave up, never backed down, and never left anyone behind. The connection to the cockpit crackled to life. This is Captain Williams. Who am I talking to? Captain, this is Falcon. I'm a passenger on your aircraft with extensive military flight experience. I'm here to help you get everyone down safely. Captain Williams had heard that call sign before. Every commercial pilot knew the stories about Falcon's incredible achievements. He couldn't believe she was actually on his plane. Falcon, we're in serious trouble here. Both engines are completely dead. All our hydraulics are failing. I'm losing control of everything. Sarah closed her eyes and visualized the aircraft's systems in her mind. During her military training, she had studied every type of plane ever built. She knew this Boeing 737 like she knew her own heartbeat. Captain, what's your current altitude and airspeed? She asked. We're at 18,000 feet and descending fast. Airspeed is dropping below safe gliding speed. Sarah did quick calculations in her head. The math was not good. Without engines, the plane was basically a very heavy glider. And they were too far from any airport to make it safely. Steele, I need you to find me the longest runway within 60 miles of our position, Sarah radioed to the fighter pilots. Already on it, Falcon. There's an Air Force base 42 miles northeast of your position. Runway is 12,000 feet long, more than enough room for a commercial aircraft. Perfect. Captain Williams, I need you to turn to heading 045 degrees right now. Are you sure? That's taking us away from Chicago. Trust me, Captain. We're going to dead stick this aircraft onto that Air Force runway. The passengers could hear Sarah's conversation over the intercom, and some of them started to feel hope for the first time since the crisis began. The way she talked, so calm and confident, made them believe that maybe they would survive after all. The businessman recorded everything on his phone. This is incredible, he whispered to the person next to him. She's actually going to save us. But Sarah was just getting started. She knew that landing a dead aircraft was only part of the problem. First, she had to help the pilots maintain control long enough to reach the runway. Captain, I need you to lower your flaps to 15 degrees. Not full flaps, just 15 degrees. Falcon, that's going to increase our descent rate. We'll lose altitude even faster. Yes, but it will also give you better control at low airspeed. Right now, control is more important than altitude. Captain Williams hesitated. Everything in his training told him not to lower flaps without engine power. But Falcon had a reputation for being right about these things. Okay, Falcon. Flaps to 15 degrees. The plane's descent stabilized slightly. The violent shaking reduced to a manageable level. Passengers stopped screaming and started listening to Sarah's instructions. Steele, how does our approach look from your position? Sarah asked. Steele was flying alongside the crippled airliner, watching everything carefully. Falcon, you're lined up well, but you're coming in too steep. At this descent rate, you'll overshoot the runway. Sarah thought quickly. She needed to stretch their glide as much as possible. Captain, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy. I want you to turn 10 degrees left, then 10 degrees right, then back to center. We're going to S-turn our way down to save altitude. S-turns? In a commercial airliner? Falcon, that's never been done before. There's a first time for everything, Captain. The alternative is crashing into the ground 5 miles short of the runway. For the next 15 minutes, Sarah guided the powerless aircraft through a series of gentle turning maneuvers that no commercial pilot had ever attempted. She was essentially flying the plane from the passenger cabin, using her knowledge of aerodynamics and her instincts developed over years of combat flying. The passengers watched in amazement as their plane zigzagged through the sky like a giant bird riding the wind currents. Some people were recording videos on their phones. Others were praying. All of them were starting to believe they might actually make it. "Falcon, this is incredible flying," Viper radioed from his F-22. "I've never seen anything like this." "Just physics and geometry," Sarah replied calmly. "And a little bit of stubbornness." The Air Force Base was now visible ahead. Emergency vehicles were lined up along both sides of the runway. Ambulances, fire trucks, and rescue teams were all ready. "Captain, you're doing great," Sarah told the pilot. "Just like landing on any other day, except you only get one chance to get it right." "Falcon, I've never attempted a dead stick landing with passengers before. What if I mess up? What if I kill everyone?" Sarah's voice became firm and commanding. "Captain Williams, listen to me. You are a professional pilot with thousands of hours of experience. You have trained for situations like this your entire career. I have seen pilots land aircraft in much worse condition than this one. You can do this. Trust your training. Trust your instincts. And trust me." The runway was getting closer. Sarah could see it clearly through the cockpit windows on her phone screen. One of the passengers was streaming live video from the front of the plane. "Flaps to 30 degrees now, Captain. Landing gear down. Falcon, without hydraulics, I'm not sure the gear will lock properly. Steele, can you visually confirm landing gear status?" Sarah asked. Steele maneuvered his F-22 underneath the passenger plane. "Falcon, main landing gear appears to be down and locked. Nose gear is down, but I can't tell if it's locked." "That'll have to do. Captain, you're on final approach. Airspeed looks good. Descent rate is perfect. Just keep her steady." Every person on the plane was holding their breath. The businessman next to Sarah's empty seat was filming everything. The little boy with the airplane book was watching out the window with wide eyes. His mother was crying, but not from fear anymore, from hope. The runway was rushing toward them now. Sarah wished she could be in the cockpit, but she trusted Captain Williams to complete the landing. "Looking good, Captain. Nice and steady. You've got this." The plane touched down hard on the runway. The landing was rough, passengers were thrown forward in their seats and luggage fell from overhead bins, but they were on the ground and alive. But they weren't safe yet. Without reverse thrust from the engines, the plane was still traveling very fast down the runway. "Maximum brakes, Captain. Everything you've got." Captain Williams pressed the brake pedals as hard as he could. The plane shuddered and slowed down, but they were running out of runway quickly. Sarah could see the end of the runway approaching through the windows. They weren't going to stop in time. "Steele, is there anything beyond the end of this runway?" she asked quickly. "Negative, Falcon. There's a grass field for about 500 yards, then a fence." "Captain, when you reach the end of the runway, keep going straight into the grass. Don't try to turn. The soft ground will help slow us down." The plane rolled off the end of the paved runway and onto the grass field. The landing gear sank into the soft earth, and the aircraft finally came to a stop just 50 yards from the fence. For a moment, there was complete silence in the cabin. Then someone started clapping. Soon everyone was applauding and cheering. People were hugging strangers and crying with relief. Sarah quietly sat back down in seat 17A. She was exhausted and emotionally drained. She had just saved 212 lives, but all she wanted to do was disappear again. The businessman who had been sitting next to her stared at her in complete amazement. "You just performed a miracle," he said, his voice full of respect. "You saved every single person on this plane." "I just did what needed to be done," Sarah replied quietly. Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft within minutes. Paramedics checked every passenger for injuries, but amazingly no one was seriously hurt. A few people had bumps and bruises from the rough landing, but everyone would go home to their families. The F-22 pilots landed at the Air Force Base and immediately asked to meet Falcon. When Steele and Viper walked up to the passenger plane, they were surprised to see a woman in a diner uniform being treated like a hero by everyone around her. Steele approached Sarah with tears in his eyes. "Falcon, that was the most incredible piece of flying I have ever witnessed. You saved all these people using nothing but your voice and your knowledge." "Thank you, Steele. You and Viper did great work out there too." "Ma'am, I need to tell you something," Steele continued. "My younger brother was in the unit you saved in Syria 3 years ago. He's alive today because of you. I never got the chance to thank you properly. Sarah felt emotions that she had buried for years starting to come to the surface. For so long she had only remembered the mission in Afghanistan that went wrong, the 3 soldiers she couldn't save. She had forgotten about all the successful missions, all the people she had rescued, all the lives she had protected. Your brother was a good soldier, she said softly. He still talks about you. He always said Falcon was the best pilot he ever flew with. News crews arrived at the Air Force Base within 2 hours. They couldn't believe that the hero of the day was a waitress from a small-town diner who had been forgotten by the military establishment. A reporter stuck a microphone in Sarah's face. Ma'am, you just saved over 200 people using skills you learned as a fighter pilot. Why didn't you tell anyone who you really were? Sarah thought carefully before answering. Because I'm not that person anymore. That person made mistakes that cost lives. I'm just Sarah now. I serve coffee and try to make people smile at a diner in Kansas. But Steele stepped forward before she could say more. With all due respect, ma'am, you'll always be Falcon to us. What happened in Afghanistan, that wasn't your fault. You saved 12 soldiers that day even though you lost 3. Any other pilot would have lost all 15. For the first time in 5 years, Sarah started to cry. She had carried the guilt of those 3 deaths every single day. She had convinced herself that she was a failure, that she deserved to lose her career and her identity. But looking at the 212 people who were now safe and would see their families again, she started to remember why she became a pilot in the first place. Not for glory or fame, but to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. The businessman who had sat next to her walked over with his laptop computer. Ma'am, I need to tell you something. I work for Boeing, the company that makes aircraft. We've been looking for someone with your exact experience and skills to head up our new aviation safety program. Sarah looked at him with surprise. What kind of program? We want to improve safety systems on commercial aircraft. The job would pay 3 times what a fighter pilot makes, and you'd be working to make flying safer for millions of passengers every year. Sarah looked around at all the faces surrounding her, the grateful passengers, the respectful military pilots, the news crews who wanted to tell her story. For the first time in years she felt like she belonged somewhere again. What would I have to do in this job? She asked. Exactly what you did today. Use your skills and knowledge to save lives. Just on a much bigger scale. You'd be designing safety systems that could prevent accidents before they happen. Sarah smiled, a real, genuine smile, not the tired, forced smile she wore while serving coffee at the diner. Can I think about it for a few days? Take all the time you need, Falcon. We'll be here when you're ready. As Sarah walked through the airport terminal, people recognized her from the news coverage and started applauding. Children asked for her autograph. Young women told her she was their role model and inspiration. But the moment that meant the most to her was when the little boy with the airplane book ran up to her with his mother. Are you really a fighter pilot like in my book? He asked with wide, excited eyes. Sarah knelt down to the boy's level and looked into his bright, curious face. I was a fighter pilot, yes. But more importantly, I'm someone who helps people when they're in trouble. That's what really matters. I want to be just like you when I grow up, the boy said. Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years, pride in who she was and what she had accomplished. You can be anything you want to be, she told him. Just remember, being a hero isn't about being perfect or never making mistakes. It's about never giving up on the people who are counting on you. The boy's mother had tears in her eyes. Thank you for saving us, she whispered. Thank you for reminding me who I am, Sarah replied. 6 months later, Sarah Martinez was back in the sky again, not as a passenger hiding her identity, but as the director of aviation safety for Boeing Corporation. She wore professional clothes now and worked in a modern office building, but she never forgot her time at Joe's Diner or the lessons she learned while serving coffee to truck drivers and farmers. Her first project was designing new emergency systems that would help commercial pilots handle engine failures like the one she had experienced. She worked with the FAA to create better training programs for airline crews. She even helped design new communication systems that would allow military pilots to assist civilian aircraft more effectively during emergencies. And sometimes, late at night when she was working in her office, she would look out the window at the planes taking off and landing safely, and she would whisper her old call sign, Falcon. Because some things once learned are never truly forgotten. And sometimes, the people who seem the most ordinary are actually the most extraordinary of all. The story of the waitress in seat 17A became famous around the world. It was turned into a movie, written about in books, and taught in aviation schools as an example of how skill, courage, and determination can overcome any obstacle. But for Sarah, the most important part wasn't the fame or recognition. It was the knowledge that she had found her way back to the person she was meant to be. She learned that making mistakes doesn't make you a failure, giving up does. And she never forgot the lesson that everyone deserves a second chance, especially when they're willing to use that chance to help others. This story teaches us many important lessons about life. First, we should never judge people by their appearance, their clothes, or their job. The person sitting next to you on a bus or serving your food might have incredible skills and amazing life experiences that you would never guess just by looking at them. Second, everyone makes mistakes and everyone deserves a chance to start over. Sarah made errors in her military career that haunted her for years, but that didn't mean she stopped being a good person or a skilled pilot. When the moment came to help others, she proved that true heroes step up no matter what happened in their past. Third, running away from your problems doesn't solve them. Sarah tried to hide from her past by working at a diner, but she only found peace when she accepted who she really was and used her abilities to help people again. Most importantly, the story shows us that being a hero isn't about being perfect. It's about having the courage to help others when they need you, even when you're scared or unsure of yourself. Sometimes the most important thing is simply not giving up on yourself or on the people counting on you.